This is Jay Michaels, and we are in the Passion Pit for Channel I, the independent theater and film station. Go to Jay Michaels Arts, JayMichaelsArts.com to find out all about it and to subscribe. Now, as you know, we have begun a week now tributing the oncoming Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival, which is in its 46th year. And I was thrilled out of my mind when I found out one of the films in it was Here Comes Frieda. I was able to watch this movie and was thrilled by it. It's easy to say, oh, I loved it. It was a great movie, but it goes much deeper than that. This short film touches you in so many ways. It was commentary about what the world is that we were experiencing and the fears of its future. And it was done brilliantly and succinctly with excellent effects and marvelous acting. And I'm really excited to be here with the screenwriter, the director, the star, and the producer of Here Comes Frieda. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I want to talk to you a little bit about the movie. I want to learn more about it because it was really an inspired thing. Please take a moment, introduce yourself so our audience knows who you brilliant people are. Ladies first.
Hi, I'm Ellie Wallwork. I play Lily in Here Comes Frieda. I am a visually impaired actress and also singer-songwriter. So thank you so much for having me here.
My absolute pleasure. I was gushing like a fool before I pressed record because I saw Ellie in Call the Midwife, and her performance in it as a visually impaired pregnant woman was really gripping. And Ellie, I have to tell you, there's one moment where you were about to step on glass in this and didn't realize it. And I'm sitting in my living room just going, oh no, and oh my goodness, really convincing, really marvelous. Pleasure to have you here. David, tell us about you.
My name is David Lavine. I'm the screenwriter of Here Comes Frieda, and I'm an actor and a writer based in New York.
You know what? I'm not surprised that you're an actor because the script to this is, and it's a short film, but it's so rich. It tells so many stories, and the one thing which I always love about a film is when it's over, it cannot be over in the audience's mind. And what you gave us in your words, we just want to know. When it was over, I was like, what else? What else is happening? It's like when a film is over and I get to go, oh, more, then I know the screenwriter did their job. So I'm not surprised that you're an actor as well. Robin, the director, please introduce yourself as well, please.
Hi, I'm Robin, the director. What can I say? Thank you for having us. Let me just really quickly say, like, David, Victor, and Ellie, it's awesome to see and be in the same space as you guys, because it's been a year since we've all been together in some capacity. I was thinking about it before we got on the call that we haven't all shared a space like this since the shoot. So how special that is. So Jay, thank you for bringing us together again.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. What you have put into the movie is relatively short. The movie's like what? Is it 15 minutes altogether? Is it
8 minutes? I think.
9 minutes.
9 minutes.
It's a 9-minute film. Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh my gosh. Robin, this is a tribute to you.
It feels like 15.
Oh, it feels like 15. Very good. Robin, what you brought to those 9 minutes, you have filled those 9 minutes in terms of putting it together. I think it's a tribute to you, just in all the material and all the content and all the enlightenment that you put into that, and I think it's really marvelous. And when you're on a starship, you have to turn to the captain, and there's Captain Victor Gallo. Victor, tell us about you, the producer.
So I want to thank you for having all of us on here today, because as Robin mentioned, we have not been in the same physical space for a while. In fact, I was just remembering the last time Robin and I were in the same physical space, we were at the Alamo Draft House in Brooklyn, booking booking a screening room for a cast and crew screening of the film, and a week later we had to cancel it because the pandemic happened. But yes, you mentioned I'm the producer of the film. The story of this film sort of originated from a kernel of an idea that David and I had, and once we decided to pursue that, the first person I reached out to was Robin, because the three of us had worked together before with very gratifying results. So the idea was to replicate or surpass those results. And here we are.
That brings me to an interesting question. When you created the script for this, when you created the concept, did you want the lead character visually impaired? Was that part of the storyline initially?
Let me handle that, because this is actually kind of a really good. Well, it's kind of a compliment to David, actually. David, whenever we start batting around ideas, David tends to want to complicate that character's life in some way, give them a challenge to overcome or hurdle, something that is going to make it more difficult for us to write a script, but at the same time, it gives us a more gratifying result. So ideally, no, and I think that was David's. I'm sorry, initially, no, that was not part of the original character description. That was something David brought to a table just to make the story fuller.
David, why visually impaired?
Well, we wanted a character that we feel like we've never seen before in a sci-fi film. We wanted a character with challenges that might put her at odds with the way the world has become. And we wanted to, I guess we should be careful about spoilers in this situation. We wanted someone who might be more vulnerable to the scheme at hand, or at least vulnerable as perceived by those forces in play.
I ask particularly that because it's a really fascinating parable, because you have put the world in some form of darkness, if you will, and you've given us a darkened world with another darkness hanging over it, and so of course someone who's able to fight through this is someone who understands it, and I thought that was a really clever parable. It also gave you the opportunity to work with Ellie. Ellie,
Yeah.
How was it to work on this?
We wanted
Yes.
a character. Oh, sorry, go.
Please.
No, I was going to say we wanted a character that had uncommon strengths, and that's, I can't remember the ideas that went into the character before that, but like it clicked for us. This was like, oh, this is who Lily is. This is the way that she moves about the world, and these are her strengths, and this is the way that others perceive her, which may not always be true.
Indeed. Ellie, what was it like in terms of this role? What did you have to prepare in order to do this? Because you seem to have gravitated now toward the science fiction realm for a little while. What did you have to prepare in terms of doing this film?
It was mostly putting myself in an incredibly vulnerable situation. So I've read a lot of post-apocalyptic books. I'm quite an avid reader, and that kind of helped me to think of the desperation Lily might be under. And not only that, I was able to add a level of authenticity. And I remember when I first got the call for this, they specifically requested me. And that had never, ever happened to me before. I think I was on a train at the time, actually, when I got the email from my agent. And she said, oh, Ellie, these people from New York want you to do this film. And I kind of had to be like, I'm sorry, what? It took me a second to really let that sink in. But ever since then, we were in like lots of conversation. There were lots of different scripts. There were lots of different drafts. And I was kept in the loop all the time, which made me really happy. And it meant that I was able to prepare what I needed to prepare. So that idea of desperation, that idea of needing to get out at all costs, of wanting something higher, of wanting something further, and just being in a real hellhole, to quote one of the lines of the script.
Indeed.
But yeah, I just found the role incredibly fascinating for me. It's not anything I've ever done before.
It definitely was unique, even in the sense of sci-fi genre. It sounds like when you said many different scripts, did you have any kind of input in terms of the creation of the character of the script?
So the script, because of budgeting and because of time, we didn't get to do some of the more interesting ideas that Robin and Victor and David had in mind. They definitely asked me what worked and what didn't work, and I had a lot of input there in terms of representation. And the thing that made me admire them so much and really, really want to do this was that they actually cared about what I thought about their script, and they cared about what I was going to say about it. So they wanted me to represent myself, and they wanted to represent me in the best way that they possibly could. And that's what means the most to me, because I'm a disabled actor and I want people to do that within the industry. I want to be represented and asked for my input. And they did that without even being prompted, which was incredible to me.
I'm glad you said that. From what I'm seeing, gentlemen, from the three of you, you're definitely a team. This is not, your agent called your agent and my people talked to your people and we did a movie. I'm seeing three colleagues here in terms of putting this together. How did you create this story? Now we essentially say it was something that David was thinking of and he spoke to Victor and then they brought in Robin, et cetera. How did it come about? Where did the idea come from? What prompted you to do it this way?
A lot of coffee conversations.
Yeah, I just thinking the same thing.
Mutual meetings. I think it's just sitting down, talking about what we like, what we don't like, what we're interested in, what inspires us. Because there is this moment where you're spending hours of your life not being paid, being away from family or whatever other activities, sitting in there having coffee, saying, what if the room looked like this? Or what if it was raining? What if the lead character was blind? And then saying, okay, let's do those things. And between I think it's part of the fun for us, at least, was having the group together and seeing what kind of ingredients you can throw into the concoction and see what comes back. And what became this massive village started as just three people sitting at a coffee table, drinking $2 coffee.
Thank goodness it was $2 coffee, so you could save money for the budget for the film, I guess. It's really interesting that you say that. It seems like ideas and it shows the real creative mind. I'm fascinated by the creative mind. And yes, just simply to say, well, what if it rained? What would happen there? What if she was blind? What would happen there? So it's really interesting that you would just click these things out of there. Now, there are audience members who don't know this movie has been on Dust Media for some time now. Correct me if I'm wrong. It premiered on Dust a couple of weeks ago. Okay. And before Dust, we have been to 4 film festivals. Okay. We have Sci-Fi, Boston Sci-Fi coming up, and we have a couple more coming up in the spring too. So it's starting to make the rounds. Excellent. For those who have not seen it, who are not lucky enough to have seen it yet, could you give us the basic plot for it? Because there are people out there listening to this going, what's this about? Why is it raining? If someone could give us the general plot line behind this. David, you want to take that one?
Sure. 20 or so years into the future, where our civilization is being ravaged by stronger and more severe superstorms, there exists a lottery in which the winner of, or the person who draws the winning ticket gets to escape to a low Earth orbiter called Upper Paradise, where they can basically escape the the rigors of the world left below. And the story begins with a young woman who lives alone in a rundown world and buys a ticket and finds herself to be the winner of it. So her journey is to redeem this ticket and escape the surface as she knows it and go to this heavenly place called Upper Paradise.
It's interesting as I'm hearing this. It's similar. There's a Ray Bradbury tale where also it's raining constantly and the madness that it ensues amongst the characters, and that suddenly came to mind as I'm hearing you talk about this. I'm seeing so many parables here. I'm seeing climate change, which is one of the reasons I think probably Ripple Effect was looking at it now, because that's one of their cause celebs at the moment. I'm hearing government corruption. I'm hearing even little takes on religion coming in there about how you can ascend to a higher, happier, drier place. So I'm hearing all these parables in here. Where did these ideas in those $2 coffee meetings, what was going through your brain to say, okay, it's going to be a storm. She's going to be blind. They're going to heaven with this lottery ticket. And spoiler alert on that, but where did these ideas come from? Where was your foundation for these thoughts?
Well, I mean, now that I'm remembering it, the very first.
No, go ahead, David, go ahead.
The very first curve we had, Victor, was climate change, right? Because that was Ripple Effect's seasonal mission. And they're like, you know, you wanted to bring to them a film, and they said, well, make it about climate change. So then we took it from there.
Yeah, basically the idea, the initial nexus was a film that addresses climate change because, as stated, that was Ripple Effect's seasonal theme. What we didn't want to do was something that sort of beat you over the head with climate change as its underlying theme. So because of that, we decided to sort of make it more to set the film in a world that was ravaged by climate change, to where that was the actual setting of the film, but it wasn't the story. Because ultimately we didn't want the story to be preachy or beat you over the head with our views on climate change. We just wanted to say, well, what if we set our story 20, 30 years into the future? What would that world look like? Then we decided, okay, well, as we started coming up with character, with plot, I think, you know, I happen to be a huge sci-fi movie fan and novel fan since I was a child. So these sort of dystopian sort of scenarios kind of come easily to me. And I think I don't want to speak for Robin, but I think Robin knows and understands the genre quite well too, because ultimately the vision for a movie is going to be shaped by the director. So while Robin was certainly instrumental in putting the story together with us, really where his influence really came to the forefront is actually creating the visual world of the story that, in my experience, goes really hand in hand with what was written in the script. It's a bleak world. It's a world with no warm colors. Everything is sort of cool color.
Right.
It's an almost claustrophobic world. It's basically, a dystopia made for very little money. That ultimately is what made the film work. We had a great script, but ultimately you have to make that you have to make the visuals match the mood and the style of the script. You want to be able to convey those ideas visually, and I think ultimately that's what brought the whole thing together.
And it's interesting you say that. Okay, yes, to make sure you can afford the visuals that you do, if you will. Robin, and I direct this to you. Your vision of dystopia is, and I won't say correct, because there's no way of saying that, but you picked a very rational, very real dystopia in your vision. Climate change is not this ravaging thing. It's just these storms that will not end. The world is not some CGI-laden horror story. It's just, what does it look like when the rain pounds down upon you after a point? And everybody, there was no madness, if you will, like you find in films of this nature. It was just people's despair. One might even say that you wouldn't call it, except for the holographic images. One might not even say it's science fiction. It's a drama. What prompted you to create this minimalist outlook? What was your thinking in terms of giving us a very real dystopia, and thus a very scary one, because this one can happen?
Thank you. So the story doesn't take plays that far into the future. So there was a sort of groundedness to the world we were building. One of the approaches I think that we had very early on between Victor, David, and I was making this also a story about class. And I think that's sort of an underlying theme of the film. This sort of rat race where three mice get an opportunity to get out and they eat each other up. And I think that's, the story in itself is very big and very grand, but our short is really small. And so trying to like isolate what about this makes the story so compelling, we found that just sort of boiling everything down into the soup, and you just have these three characters kind of representing themselves as individuals, but also like what can appear as weak, what can appear as strong, what can appear as wealthy, all sort of colliding in this small compact space. And who becomes the victor? And is it luck? Is it fate? Is it anything but? I'm now rambling, but these are the things that we would we would talk about in our meetings, and just sort of like look at an idea and just start spinning and talking about it on end, and it's kind of seeing where that creative trail goes. And I think that's where this dialectic between the characters sort of collides in this room. And I'm now rambling, but
you're not rambling at all. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. A word that hit me when you said this was fate. And yes, we have the parable of religion in the sense that you can do something that will elevate you above this darkened world into a more joyous place. So there's our religion parable, if you will, for a moment. But it is laden with this commercial. It's not a matter of doing a good deed. It's a matter of getting the right damn lottery ticket. And I just thought that was fascinating. That okay, there it is. I got the right number, and so now I'm going to heaven.
Jay, it's very. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please.
When we started this film, the theme at the forefront was certainly climate change, but a year after finishing it, and after having viewed it so many times now that it's out there in the world, it more and more appears to me. It just kind of funny to think of it this way, but it more and more appears to me like the primary theme of it, at least in my perception now, has become, as Robin suggested, a story about class, a story about the haves, the have-nots, the dog-eat-dog world in which they live, the fact that, as you just mentioned, ascension is not really because of some sort of virtue, but basically because you purchase the winning tickets. Ultimately, while that wasn't the primary driver of the story, the sort of like hyper-capitalistic dystopia, that ultimately is what I find to be the biggest theme about it now, which has been an interesting shift in how it was created to how I perceive it now. I just thought it was an interesting thing to share.
It's also a world we can afford to create. It's harder to create a world that you can't afford.
This is also very true.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm a big fan of German expressionistic film. and the shadow
Oh,
of Nosferatu, the eerie camera angle of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari is that much more brilliant than whatever CGI you're going to throw at me. So good. I'm glad you couldn't afford it because it worked really well.
Thank you.
Ellie, did you get any during this? As we're now hearing from Victor that okay, the climate change movie now suddenly is a parable of this, and we suddenly see its class and all of this, and suddenly one movie has become 12 movies in 9 minutes. Did you have any aha moments as you were working on this, as you were creating this? Because you never left the screen essentially. Was there ever any point as you're rehearsing it, as you're filming it, where you just went, oh my goodness, I didn't realize, and something hit you to layer upon your character?
So many moments, I think. And it was weird because we only shot it over a weekend. Like, it took about 2 days, I think it was, to film the entire thing. And when I think about that weekend now, it feels like and this is in the best way possible, it feels like it went on for at least a week because there was so much packed into it. And this is only giving away a slight spoiler, but when Lily is in danger, severe danger of what she thinks is losing her life, I remember I was lying on the ground and sort of staring up at the ceiling, or the bit of the ceiling that I could see, because I can only really see light. And I just thought to myself, oh my God, if this was real, if this was happening, I would just have to accept that I was going to die. And when that hits you, when you're actually filming it, it's a real revelation. It really, really freaks you out. And there were other moments like when Jessie, the costume designer, was putting the costume on me. She did some incredible work with layering, and as it was all being put together, I was just thinking, like, this is what you would wear. This is not high-end fashion. This is just cobbled together, and it's wonderful because it just really represents the desperation and the poverty that Lily lives in, as you could probably see by the setting and everything around her. And being involved in that process, having the costume put on me, having little bits of costume chopped off to make it seem more ragged and more put together, that was incredible for me, because I thought, in effect, I'm being put into this world and it feels real. It didn't really feel like a set at one point, because yes, there were cameras, yes, there were lights, but the place was as real as you could make it, and the costume was as real as you could make it as well. So I really felt like I was embroiled within this dystopian landscape.
This is an interesting question, and pardon me, it's a slightly personal one. Tell me shut up if you wish. Whenever I'm before the cameras, or whenever I'm in front of an audience, as I do a lot of live theater work, there's always that moment that I have where, okay, there's the audience. Okay, there's the red light of the camera. Now, you don't have that as clearly as the rest of us.
No.
So does the reality of film be stronger to you? Like you said, you were laying there thinking, oh my God, I could die here.
Yeah. Honestly,
you feel it stronger?
I would say so, because yes, I'm aware that the cameras are there, because obviously we've taken and retaken a scene, and like camera action, etc. But when I'm rehearsing, or when I'm actually performing, it feels like there's less of a separation between myself and the character that I'm playing, because my perception of the set is only what I know is around me, is only what I know that I'm touching, or what I'm about to touch, or the space I'm about to walk over. Everything goes a bit smaller, so I sort of lose sight of the massive bigger picture, and I'm just going along, pacing out the things that I need to do and the places I need to go. So I really get put into this concentrated, almost microcosm of the whole thing. And for me, it helps to put my character and my experiences into perspective. So I would say, yeah, it's a lot more concentrated and a lot more real, really.
Very illuminating, quite frankly. Gentlemen, I ask you sort of your version. I ask you the same question, but obviously positioned for you. Over a weekend, oh my God, I think Ed Wood spent longer on his movies. Over that weekend, how was it for you? Because you're all three in very integral positions in this. How did it feel putting this together in such a short time, with your customary indie budget, and all of that. Were there moments, did you have aha moments where you went, oh, that's what this play, oh, wait a minute, that's what this show is about. Okay, can we do this? Were there moments where you felt, pardon the pun again, an alien excitement from this, that there was something new happening in front of you?
I would say I never doubted we could do this over a weekend. We shot with Ellie on 2 days, and we had a green screen day with Sarita on the third day. So it was a 3-day shoot. I mean, we always knew it was going to be a challenge. And in fact, there were a couple of shots that we wanted to get that we ended up not being able to get because we ran out of time for those. But at the same time, I knew that the team we had put together, plus David and Robin, and that includes David and Robin, I should say, was super capable, super professional. So if we all planned out that this was going to take place over 3 days, even though it was going to be a challenge and a lot of work, I knew that we're going to be able to handle it because the people that we surrounded ourselves with are the sort of people that would handle it. So there was never any doubt or epiphany for me, just because I knew this is a plan we set out to do. So we're gonna get it done.
So you were definitely the captain of the starship. It's like, this is going to happen, and that's that.
I mean, to an extent, yes. But I mean, I can't underscore this enough because ultimately film is it's a cliche, but it's such a collaborative medium that you can set your goals, but in order to meet those goals, you have to make sure that people you surround yourself with are, really fucking good at what they do. So that's how we did it.
And I was just going to say, I think, of Robin and Victor's many strengths, one of them is team building and the people that they brought onto this project. So, all that work is done, in advance and front loaded. And then when you get the right team in, and under Robin's command, you just see it start to roll out. And it really can be a beautiful thing. But it's not going to happen unless these guys have found the right people. And they did. And I think everyone, you see kind of the harmony of all of these parts coming together during those first 2 days of shooting. And for me, as the screenwriter, like much of the weekend was spent pacing, because there wasn't a lot for me to do. I did a lot of PA work. I fetched water for people. I did some art department work. I cleaned out the cups that Ellie was handling and took care of the coffee and stuff. And I was just, I did whatever I could to kind of support all the people around us. And every now and then when I would sit down next to Victor at the monitors, once they started rolling, and I would see these shots that Robin set up, and you just say, God, that's so beautiful. That's more than we ever wanted. So
that's what I was going to allude to ask you. Were there moments where you sat down and just looked and said, wow, there it is?
Absolutely. And same with the previous time that we all worked together, when Victor and I had kind of like done our jobs, and we were sitting in the back in our little video villages and seeing just the alchemy of what Robin was able to put together. It was really fulfilling.
Robin, and by the way, this isn't to say that I wasn't impressed by what I was looking at on set, but it's just like, as David alluded to, we've worked with Robin before, so I knew we were gonna get some beautiful images from what he was capturing. So that's why there was no epiphany. But yeah, I was still, very satisfied with what was going on. And if I could just add one thing, every day before we started rolling, probably dating back like 2 or 3 months, was pretty much like a stressful and anxiety-filled day. But once the cameras start rolling on day one, or at least for me, it's a very, very chill, sort of relaxing, let's just see what we've created and see it happen. Because if you put in the work before you start rolling, your set should run, you're always going to have problems, but your set should run pretty smoothly.
It's funny you say that. There's a book by Anthony Scher where he talks about his creation of his version of Richard III, and it's a goodly thick book about his process, about the sketches he made, about his character work, etc. And the last chapter, which is about 2 pages, just says, and we opened, it ran very well, the critics enjoyed it, and it was a lovely run, and we had a party, thank you. And so it was like the performance was nothing but all of that. And dude, you don't have to tell me, we have been chatting on email for some time now, and you should hire yourself out as a cheerleader, because there is no prouder papa than you in terms of this movie. So you don't have to convince any of us on that. Robin, I'm asking you the same thing that I asked David. When you looked in the monitor, when everything came together and there it was, how'd you feel? Was it wow, look at that? Was it, oh my goodness, I didn't realize? Was it an aha moment? What did you get when you said action?
Well, there's a famous joke, which is, it's all talk until I'm on set having a breakfast sandwich. And
that's a famous quote.
I mean, it's a quote.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock, I think.
Was it Hitchcock? Oh, I thought it was Orson Welles, maybe, but all right.
One once said, "It's all talk until I'm on set having a breakfast sandwich." And so, there is this sort of surreal moment in build up to getting to the shoot, and there's always a fear that something, that you're working on doesn't shoot. And so, as Victor said, that period right before the production was very stressful. It was also just like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Ellie's gonna know how to play. This is gonna happen. I think I think once Ellie landed in New York, I was like, okay, we're gonna make a movie. And then on day 2, when we're in the room, it's we have all 3 characters there, or rather all 3 performers. Ellie and Charlie are doing stunts. Sarita's getting ready for her scene coming up. And it was just this moment, because like Ellie said, it's, we shot this over a weekend. There's just this moment where like, wow, we did it. And this is great. And the experience is so positive. It's not just like, oh, we made our labor intensive, like we just took all these people and threw them through hell to make this movie. It was actually, it was a very pleasant experience. It was a very pleasant and fun experience. And I think everyone who was in that room will tell you that it was a unique shoot, and that you don't get to do days like that all the time. And I'm tooting our own horn over here, but I'm also very proud that the experience of making this movie was as positive as it was. And I think that's one of the reasons why Ellie is here. Because it was a fun shoot.
It's literally the most fun I've ever had on set ever, I think. Like it made me so happy, and I just remember it being over and me being just like, why can't we have, I don't know, 4 more weekends of this? This is wonderful. And it makes me happy whenever I think back on it. Yeah. Which just shows that you all did a really good job.
Thank you.
One could tell by everyone's demeanor initially before Ellie spoke. I could tell by your demeanor that this was a joyous experience. I could see in the way you're speaking and how you're connecting that this was truly a joyous experience. And my last confession, if you will, to Ellie, when I asked to have the team come in for an interview, in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, she's in England and she did Dr. Who and she's too busy. And when I heard, oh, she's coming, I was like, okay, you know what? I bet they all had a blast. And I bet this is just still more fun for them. And you proved me right on that. So that's Definitely. Wonderful. Ellie, quick question to you. This is your your second sci-fi experience.
Yes.
Do you plan to do more? Are you saying sci-fi's not so bad? Okay.
I mean, I'd love to do more if more is available. It was really good. I mean, like my sister came along with me. Oh, thank you. My sister came along with me to do the shoot because she was looking after me essentially. And she said that she's never seen me seem so comfortable ever. And she said that me doing sci-fi, I just looked at home and looked really, really happy, which kind of shows me that maybe she was right, you know, maybe there is something there. And I really enjoy sci-fi as a genre because you can stretch the boundaries of reality a lot more. And that's what I really like doing.
Glad you said that. Gentlemen, I ask you the same question. Now, Victor, I know you're an aficionado from way back, as am I. Gentlemen, how do you feel about sci-fi? Do you feel the same way about it as a genre, that it is a way of stretching? You can tell stories in so many different ways.
Yes, I have been a fan since childhood. I mean, dating back to say Star Wars when I was a little kid, but through, you know, the books of William Gibson, old sci-fi like La Jetée, which Robin and I actually spoke about a lot before when we were thinking about, you know, how to visually approach this movie. Even I do this daily exercise almost where I compare current events to dystopian sci-fi that I read when I was a teenager, because it's like, oh my God, we're living in the world that we imagined, you know, 40 years ago. And I would love to continue in the genre, whether it's more shorts, a feature, or a series, whatever. But it's one of the genres that speaks the most to me, and has been from the get-go.
David, how about you?
I have a lot of fun building worlds and imagining. You know, I don't think my knowledge of sci-fi is as deep as Victor's and Robin's, but I can say, has this been done before? What if we do this? And I think, you know, one of the great pleasures of sci-fi is the freedom that it gives you, because you can imagine all sorts of things for your characters, and doing a low budget sci-fi is especially challenging because you want to create that world, but you have all these limitations. So, you know, how can you work around that? So I'm all in for doing more. And, you know, as we proceed within this dystopia that many of us feel that we're already in, there will always be another dystopia around the corner that's even worse. So there's some optimism for you.
I'm going to ask that question in a minute, but first, Robin, how about you in terms of sci-fi? I'm hearing you're just as much a fan. Is this a genre celeb for you?
I think, well, creatively, it's just like a limitless genre, and there's, you know, whether you go towards a dystopian world or a sci-fi fantasy world in outer space where characters are riding dragons, like there's just so much like room. And I think especially when you're collaborating with friends, there's a lot of inspiration that you can kind of link on and grasp on. And I think that's what's most attractive for me, is just the sort of limitlessness of the space, as well as the sort of previous inspirations that Victor mentioned, like Star Wars. Blade Runner was an inspiration for us. Victor, I'm halfway through the Dune book series, so.
Oh, right on. Okay.
So yes, I could say I'm a fan.
I only read the first one.
I'm a sci-fi fan. I am a sci-fi fan.
Dune, there's a happy ending for you. The last question I asked, I am a proponent of the fact that all science fiction is really parable. If we all watched Contagion in 2011 when it came out, maybe we wouldn't be in little boxes today. If we all listened at some point to that fantastical tale, maybe we'd be in a different world. I have a watch now that I can get phone calls on, and I can get my heart rate and all sorts of fancy things. And I didn't think that was going to go past Dick Tracy in the 1930s, but here I am wearing it. What's the future now? Now, David, you very, very bright and Disney-like said, okay, we have more dystopias to come.
Right.
So I ask you all, let's gear it within your movie. why should people watch this? Not just because it's a great movie, but what's the lesson? When people watch this and they walk out, what must they remember? What must they know to change the future, if you will, or to stop this future? What were you telling us to do to not screw up?
There was always a little bit of a motivation to make something akin to a cautionary tale. If we continue on the path that we're on, this is what the world may look like a couple of decades from now. So if there's a takeaway, I would want an audience to consider is that, there are a lot of behaviors and systems that if they continue progressing at the pace at which they're progressing, are just going to keep worsening things for the climate, in terms of class and inequality, in terms of predation. Do we want to continue and roll the dice, or do we want to maybe course correct?
Gentlemen, other thoughts?
I think for me, actually, I think one thing that's very interesting as far as human behavior is concerned, Ellie's character is always offering an item or something to the other characters, and the other characters are always trying to take something. And there's a selfishness that leads to a demise in both in the two characters that Ellie interacts with, and especially after our current situation with COVID and with the pandemic, I think there's the road of selfishness doesn't lead anywhere. Short-sightedness doesn't go anywhere. And that's something that I think that's something that I've actually taken out of the movie, that I don't know if was intentionally there from the beginning, but as I watch the movie and think back upon it, don't be selfish.
That's great. That's just like your production scheme. How simple, but how powerful.
Yeah.
Well said. David, how about you? What did you infuse in your words that said, okay, be careful?
Yeah. Be careful. You can't trust anyone.
Very cheerful.
No, there's I guess I'm not sure. I mean, it's kind of it's bleak. I think you have to there are predators around every corner, and you have to look out for yourself. And there is the human spirit of Lily is what perseveres. So there is that glimmer of hope. And reading some of the reactions our viewers have had, they've taken all kinds of, taken that glimmer and gone in all kinds of directions. And I don't know if that was my intention. We did talk a lot about what our final notes would be. And we kind of had a lot of discussions about where, what that final note would be. And I'm very happy with what, we came up with, that there is, there is light there.
You named the character Lily.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Why the name, or why is she?
Why the name? I also have the theory there are no accidents, that everything is subconscious.
I think I know what you're going to say, but there was really, that there's that Lily is a plant, and it's about life, and isn't a lily kind of a funereal
flower,
plant?
David.
Exactly.
I don't know, is it?
I'm sorry for laughing.
Maybe that was somewhere in my subconscious.
It's brilliant, because lilies are the flowers that they talk about on graves. That's the flower. And of course you'd have this in terms of the character, like Robin mentioned, the character is giving while everyone else is taking. And so we get the notion of this bright spot amid this funereal moment in our lives. So that was very clever of you.
Okay,
Subconsciously.
Your subconscious.
I'll say the other name we were thinking of was stinkweed, so I'm glad we went with
Oh,
that.
thanks so much.
It would not have been as serious if someone walked in, "Hi, are you stinkweed?" No, I don't think that would have worked. I have the expression, "Are you a genius by accident or on purpose?" And it comes from psychological things. And to mention the name, to have her called Lily, I think is very clever. Lily, Ellie, when this was all over, when the fun was all over, and you sat down with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever, and
Tea.
Tea.
Yeah.
Who am I talking to? Of course, a cup of tea.
It's tea, honestly.
Of course. And you said, "Wow, look at what I've just done." What message did you think the audience needed to have heard? What did the audience need to get from your performance from the film? What do we need to take away?
So I was thinking about this as everyone was speaking, and the thing I wanted people to take away the most was that you shouldn't discount your vulnerable members of society. So this was really interesting, actually, because a lot of viewers were asking me questions about whether I thought it was important for visually impaired actors to play characters, and why was she blind, and did her blindness affect things? And I just thought, well, if we're in a dystopian society, disability doesn't magically disappear. Like, I don't, regrow my retinas, and people don't magically have legs when they didn't have them to begin with. We're still disabled, like we still exist. And so what I found so interesting about this film was that we tackled that head on, and Lily's disability, Lily's blindness, wasn't necessarily the central point of the story. I think the only time, apart from visually, that it comes up is when Russ says, "You don't have to see what a hellhole we live in." And that was so interesting to me, because she's blind and yet she's still living her life, and I'm blind and I'm still living my life. And so when it was all over, I was thinking, what do I do now? Like, what do I do after this incredible experience? And I just thought, well, I'm going to live in the same way that Lily would have had to have done.
It's sort of like this pessimistic view of equality.
Yeah.
Okay, we're all suffering. Doesn't matter who. We're all here.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you said, we're all in hell. So that's that.
Exactly. We might as well do what we can. And even when someone's at rock bottom, or when someone is in the most deplorable, desperate situation, they still find a way to claw their way out. And that's what I really liked about this one.
And well said, to claw their way out.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. This has been a pleasure, and it's a standing tribute to the film 9 minutes, and I think we could probably talk for another 9 hours about it and still be enlightening in our discussion. I really appreciate chatting with you. I'm going to spread the word via Boston Sci-Fi, via Ripple Effect. This needs to be a movie to see. This needs to be one to see. This is a brilliant film, number one. This is a learning lesson, equally as brilliant film. And I thank you all for making it. I thank you all for sitting with me for this and telling me all about this wonderful movie. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
My pleasure.